The first rule of working overnight on the cross-country express was simple: avoid eye contact with passengers after 2 a.m. My supervisor didn't explain why when he trained me 3 years ago, just stated it like an immutable law of the universe. I never questioned it. Night shift conductors develop peculiar superstitions. I figured this was just another. Until last Tuesday. I'd been covering the Denver to Chicago route for almost 4 years. The overnight runs paid better, and I needed the money after my divorce. Besides, I preferred the quiet carriages, the gentle rocking of the train, and the anonymity darkness provides. You become invisible at night, both to the handful of passengers and to yourself. The train was unusually empty that night, just 11 passengers scattered across 6 carriages. A businessman typing frantically on his laptop in car 2. A young couple sharing earbuds in car 4. An elderly woman with knitting needles that clicked like metronomes. A few others trying to sleep. And him, the man in seat 23C. I first noticed him during ticket checks after Denver. Nothing remarkable, mid-40s, unremarkable brown hair, gray pea coat. He had a newspaper folded neatly on his lap and a small leather bag tucked under his seat. When I asked for his ticket, he handed it over without looking up, his fingers pale and slender. The ticket was for the full journey to Chicago, printed weeks ago. Long trip, I said, making the small talk that helps pass the hours. He nodded, still not looking up. I make it often. Something in his voice raised the hair on my neck, not threatening, just wrong somehow, like hearing your own voice played back on a recording. I moved on. Around midnight, as we cut through the vast darkness of eastern Colorado, I made my rounds. The train was quieter now, most passengers asleep or pretending to be. The man in 23C hadn't moved. His newspaper remained folded on his lap, untouched. He stared out the window, though there was nothing to see but his own reflection against the blackness. "Can I get you anything?" I asked, breaking protocol. We aren't required to offer service after the cafe car closes. He turned slowly, and this time our eyes met. His were pale, so pale they seemed colorless in the dim light. Not blind, just washed out. "No," he said. "I'm waiting." "For what?" His mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Nebraska." I nodded as if this made perfect sense and continued my rounds. When I reached the end of the car, I glanced back. He was staring at me, head turned at an uncomfortable angle. I pretended not to notice. In the staff compartment, I checked the passenger manifest. The ticket for 23C had been purchased with cash at the station, despite being bought weeks ahead. The name listed was Thomas Ridley. I googled it on my phone but found nothing notable. By 1 a.m., we were nearing the Nebraska border. I fought the drowsiness that always comes in those dead hours. The train's rhythm had lulled 2 of my colleagues to sleep in the break room. I envied them. Something about passenger 23C kept me alert, anxious. I made another round. The businessman was finally asleep, his laptop still open but dark. The elderly woman's knitting rested in her lap, her head tilted against the window. The couple had stretched across their row, the girl using the boy's jacket as a pillow. Seat 23C was empty. I stopped, confused. His bag remained under the seat, newspaper still on the cushion. Perhaps the bathroom. I continued my round, checking each restroom. All vacant. When I returned to car 3, he was back in his seat. The newspaper now open to the obituary section. "Excuse me, sir," I said. "Everything all right?" He looked up with those colorless eyes. "We're in Nebraska now." I nodded. "About 20 minutes ago. It always happens in Nebraska." He folded the newspaper carefully. "Have you ever noticed that, Meredith?" I froze. My name tag only says M. Klein. Not Meredith. Never Meredith. "I'm sorry?" "Your name. It's Meredith, isn't it? Meredith and Klein. Born September 3, 1988, in Tallahassee, Florida." The train seemed to lurch, though I knew our track was smooth. Nobody knew my middle name. I'd stopped using it after college. "I think you have me confused with someone else," I managed. I don't get confused, Meredith. Not about important things. He reached into his coat pocket and withdrew a small, worn photograph. He placed it carefully beside his newspaper but didn't let go. Would you like to see? Every instinct screamed to walk away, call security, anything but look at that photograph. But I couldn't move. That's all right, I said. I should continue my rounds. It will only take a moment. He slid the photo across the armrest, finally releasing it. Just a quick look. Against my better judgment, I glanced down. It was a Polaroid of a house, my house. Not my current apartment, but my childhood home in Florida. The one that burned down when I was 16. Where did you get this? My voice was barely a whisper. I was there, he said simply. The night of the fire. My lungs constricted. That's impossible. That house burned down 20 years ago. He nodded. 20 years and 73 days ago. February 17, 2004. The fire department ruled it an electrical fault. Your parents were trapped upstairs. You were staying at a friend's house, Jennifer Lowell. Lucky coincidence. The train's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, suddenly too bright. Everything he said was correct. Details from newspaper articles, maybe, but how did he know about Jen? Who are you? You don't remember me? He seemed genuinely disappointed. I suppose you wouldn't. You were so focused on the flames. You never noticed me watching from across the street. I wasn't there, I said automatically. The lie I told myself for 20 years. He smiled sadly. The gasoline can in the garden shed. Your father's lighter. You didn't mean for them to be home, did you? They were supposed to be at the charity dinner. You checked the invitation. My knees buckled. I grabbed the seat in front of him to steady myself. Nobody knew. Nobody could know. I'd never told anyone, not even my therapist during those mandatory sessions after. What do you want? My voice was a rasp. Nothing you haven't already given, he said. I just needed to see you again. To confirm. Confirm what? That it was really you. I've been following similar cases for decades. House fires, family tragedies, sole survivors. Looking for patterns. He leaned forward. You're not unique, Meredith. There are others like you. I find them, one by one. A wave of nausea hit me. Are you with the police? He laughed, a sound like paper tearing. No. Think of me as a collector. Of people like you. Special people. I need to go, I said, backing away. Of course. He settled back in his seat. I've found what I came for. I'll be getting off at the next stop. I stumbled to the staff compartment, my breathing shallow. I locked the door and sank to the floor. My phone shook in my hand as I pulled up Google, searching. Thomas Ridley Collector. Nothing relevant. I tried. Fire investigator Ridley, serial arson researcher. Anything that might explain who he was. Nothing. When my breathing steadied, I checked the security camera feed on my tablet. Car 3, seat 23C was empty again. His bag and newspaper were gone. I forced myself to return to car 3. Empty seat. I checked under it, no bag. I asked the half-asleep passenger across the aisle if he'd seen the man leave. He hadn't seen anyone in that seat all night. At the next station, a tiny platform in the middle of nowhere, Nebraska, I watched the security footage from the platform cameras as we pulled away. No one had disembarked. For the rest of the journey, I checked every car, every bathroom, every storage closet. Nothing. When we reached Chicago, I reported the incident to my supervisor, careful to omit the details of our conversation. He reviewed the passenger manifest. No ticket was issued for 23C on last night's service, he said, showing me the screen. That seat was empty. That's impossible. I saw him. I took his ticket. My supervisor frowned. Get some rest, Klein. You've been pulling too many overnight shifts. I nodded, not arguing. But as I left the station, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Others like you always ride the Denver-Chicago line. I'll be watching. See you in Nebraska. I've requested a transfer to day shifts. My supervisor approved it immediately, no questions asked. But yesterday, I found a small newspaper clipping slipped under my apartment door. A house fire in Minneapolis. A teenager, the only survivor, being interviewed by police. And at the edge of the photograph, barely visible in the background, a man in a gray pea coat, watching. I've started researching house fires along the Denver-Chicago train route. There are dozens every year. Too many to be coincidence. And in the archived news photos sometimes, if you look closely at the onlookers. I'm writing this all down because I'm working my final overnight shift tonight. Denver to Chicago. One last run. I've requested seat 23C for myself. I need to know who he is, what he is, and why he chose me. If you're reading this and you work the overnight trains, remember the first rule: don't make eye contact after 2 a.m. And if you see a man in 23C with colorless eyes, run. The security cameras at quick stop number 4187 have a 6-second delay. 6 full seconds between what happens and what appears on the monitor behind the counter. I discovered this on my third night shift when a teenager in a red hoodie pocketed a candy bar at 2:17 a.m. By the time his theft appeared on my screen, he was already out the door, bell chiming his escape into the empty parking lot. 6 seconds doesn't sound like much, but it's enough time for something terrible to begin. I've worked at Quick Stop for 11 months now. The graveyard shift pays an extra $2.50 an hour, and I need every penny since Ella left with our daughter. The divorce papers cited irreconcilable differences, but we both knew the truth. I was never home, and when I wasn't really there. Night shifts had rewired my brain, transformed me into something nocturnal and distant. The store sits at the intersection of Harmon Road and the interstate, surrounded by nothing but fields and the occasional passing headlight. Between midnight and 5 a.m., I might see 5 customers, truckers mostly, the occasional insomniac, sometimes teenagers looking for beer I won't sell them. The isolation never bothered me. After the shipyard closed and 200 of us lost our jobs, I found comfort in the quiet fluorescent hum, the predictable rhythm of night. Until Martin started coming in. The first time I saw him was 3 months ago. 3:14 a.m. on a Tuesday. The bell chimed and he shuffled in wearing a gray overcoat despite the summer heat. Mid-50s, balding, with wire-rimmed glasses that caught the overhead light. Nothing remarkable except the time and his smile. Too wide, too many teeth. "Coffee still fresh?" he asked, voice scratchy like it hadn't been used in days. I nodded toward the machine. "Made it an hour ago." He filled a large cup, added nothing to it, paid with exact change. No rewards card, no small talk. Before leaving, he glanced up at the camera in the corner, smile widening just a fraction. 2 nights later, he returned at the exact same time. Same order, same exact change. This time, he asked my name. "Daniel," I said against store policy. We're supposed to wear name tags, but I'd forgotten mine since my second week. "Daniel," he repeated, rolling it around his mouth like he was tasting it. "You work here every night?" "Most nights." "Good. That's good, Daniel." He left without explaining why. After his 4th visit, I mentioned the strange regular to Kev during shift change. "Gray coat? Kind of intense stare?" Kev frowned. "Never seen him. But I'm not surprised you'd get the weirdos. Something about those middle hours, man. That's when the fabric gets thin." "The fabric?" "Between normal and whatever's on the other side." Kev laughed at my expression. "Just messing with you. Probably just some insomniac like the rest of us." But over the next month, Martin came in every Tuesday and Thursday at precisely 3:14 a.m. Always for coffee, always exact change, always that too-wide smile. He began lingering, asking questions that seemed innocent enough but left me uneasy. "Ever been married, Daniel?" Do you miss your daughter? Does it bother you, being alone out here? Vulnerable? I never told him about Ella or my daughter. I checked the security tapes one morning before clocking out. Strangely, they showed Martin entering but never leaving. Just coffee, conversation, then nothing, as if he evaporated between camera angles. Must be a blind spot in the coverage. Last week, he broke pattern. Came in on a Monday at 3:14 a.m., eyes bloodshot behind his glasses. Something's going to happen soon, Daniel. He placed his exact change on the counter. I wanted you to be prepared. What are you talking about? He leaned in, that smile stretching. You remind me of myself. Before. Before what? Tuesday. 3:14. He tapped his watch. Pay attention to the cameras. He left me standing there, skin cold despite the store's broken air conditioning that kept the temperature near 80 all night. When Tuesday came, I almost called in sick. But I needed the hours, the money. Child support doesn't pay itself. So I arrived for my shift at 10 p.m., nodded to Kev as he left, and settled in for another long night. 1 a.m., trucker buying cigarettes and aspirin. 2 a.m., no one. 2:47 a.m., couple getting gas, arguing in hushed tones by the pump. 3:10 a.m., my eyes fixed on the door, stomach knotted with inexplicable dread. 3:14 a.m. came and went. No Martin. By 3:20, I felt foolish. What was I expecting? I busied myself restocking the cooler, keeping one eye on the security monitor. At exactly 3:26, the bell chimed. Not Martin. A thin man in his 20s wearing a baseball cap pulled low. He wandered the aisles with his hands in his pockets, glancing at me occasionally. Shoplifter behavior. I watched him on the monitor. With a 6-second delay, I saw him twice, in person meandering by the chips, and 6 seconds earlier on the screen doing the same. Can I help you find something? I called out. Just looking. His voice was tight, higher than I expected. He approached the counter with a candy bar. As he reached for his wallet, I caught a glimpse of something metal tucked into his waistband. My heart slammed against my ribs as realization hit. This wasn't a shoplifter. This was a robbery. I glanced at the security monitor automatically. What I saw made my blood freeze. On the screen, 6 seconds in the past, stood Martin. Not by the door where the bell had chimed, but directly behind the thin man, having appeared from nowhere. He stared directly into the camera, that horrible smile stretching to impossible width, and raised one finger to his lips in a shushing gesture. I looked up from the monitor. In real time, there was no Martin. Only the thin man, whose hand was now reaching for whatever was in his waistband. The register, he said, voice shaking. Open it. Now. I fumbled with the keys, mind racing. Where had Martin come from on the monitor? Where had he gone? The register drawer slid open with an electronic ding. Hurry up! The man's voice cracked as he pulled out a gun, pointing it at my chest with trembling hands. Amateur. Desperate. The worst kind. I raised my hand slowly. Take it. There's only about 200. Tuesday night, we make the big deposit Monday evening. His eyes darted around, pupils huge. High on something. 200? That's it. That's it. Please, I have a daughter. I don't know why I mentioned her. Perhaps some primal instinct, trying to humanize myself. Shut up. Just... He waved the gun, agitated. Put it in a bag. As I reached for a plastic bag, my eyes caught the monitor again. 6 seconds in the past, Martin was moving, stepping forward until he stood directly behind my robber. He placed a pale hand on the man's shoulder. In real time, the robber suddenly stiffened, his face contorting. The gun wavered. What the? He gasped, free hand clutching at his chest. What's happening? On the monitor, Martin was smiling at me over the robber's shoulder, hands still in place, head tilting in a question, as if waiting for my decision. The robber was gasping now, gun lowered, face ashen. Heart attack? Overdose? Whatever was happening, he was in trouble. I should call 911. I should help him. But I didn't move. On the screen, Martin's smile widened further. In real time, the robber collapsed to his knees, the gun clattering to the linoleum. Help! He wheezed. My phone was in my pocket. Emergency services were 3 taps away. The nearest hospital was 20 minutes out. Instead, I watched the security monitor. Martin was no longer looking at the robber. He was staring at me, nodding slowly, approvingly. The young man fell forward onto the floor. His body convulsed once, twice, then went still. I stood frozen, heartbeat thundering in my ears, for what felt like hours but must have been seconds. Then training kicked in. I called 911, reported an attempted robbery. A man collapsed, possible heart attack. I even attempted CPR until the ambulance arrived, though I knew it was pointless. The paramedics pronounced him dead at the scene. Police took my statement, reviewed the security footage. They were sympathetic. Poor clerk, traumatized by a robbery gone wrong, did everything he could to save the guy. Natural causes, they concluded. Toxicology would confirm later what I already suspected: methamphetamine-induced cardiac arrest. Tragic, but not uncommon. No one mentioned seeing anyone else in the footage. No Martin. Just me and the robber, then just me, performing textbook CPR on a corpse. I was given 2 weeks paid leave for trauma. My manager even suggested counseling, which the company would cover. I nodded, thanked her, went home to my empty apartment. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes I saw Martin's smile, his hand on the robber's shoulder, his approving nod. I saw myself doing nothing for 6 critical seconds. Thursday, 3:14 a.m. I wasn't working, but I drove to Quick Stop anyway. Kev looked surprised to see me. Thought you were taking time off, man. I am. Just expecting someone. Kev raised an eyebrow but didn't question me. I bought a coffee and sat in my car in the parking lot, watching the entrance. No Martin. Friday night, I returned to work despite my manager's protests. I needed the routine, the familiar. I needed to prove to myself that I'd imagined everything. Stress response. Trauma. Perfectly explainable. The shift passed normally. A few customers. Restocking. Mindless tasks to occupy my hands while my mind circled endlessly around those 6 seconds where I'd done nothing. At 3:14 a.m., the bell chimed. Martin walked in, smiling that too wide smile, eyes bright behind his glasses. Hello, Daniel. My mouth went dry. You're not real. He tilted his head, amused. I feel real. He approached the counter, placed exact change beside the register. Coffee still fresh? What did you do? My voice was barely a whisper. Me? I didn't do anything. He leaned closer. We did. I didn't. 6 seconds, Daniel. You watched for 6 seconds. You decided. He tapped the counter rhythmically. You're like me now. Cold washed over me. Like you? We find each other, eventually. People who understand that 6 seconds can change everything. His voice dropped lower. I've been watching you for months. You have potential. Potential for what? That smile stretched impossibly wider. You'll see. Next time will be easier. And there will be a next time, Daniel. There's always someone who deserves those 6 seconds. He turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Daniel? I took the liberty of adjusting your cameras. The delay is now 10 seconds. You'll appreciate the extra time. The bell chimed as he left. I stood frozen behind the counter, staring at the security monitor where, 10 seconds in the past, Martin was still smiling at me. For the first time in 11 months of night shifts, I abandoned my post. Ran to my car. Drove home shaking. I quit the next day. Found day work at a warehouse. It pays less, but the sun keeps me sane. But sometimes, when I can't sleep, I find myself driving past Quick Stop number 4187 at exactly 3:14 a.m. And sometimes, I see Martin through the windows, talking to the new night clerk. Teaching them about the delay. About the 6 seconds. Now 10. Last week, I read in the local paper about another incident there. Another robbery attempt. Another natural death. I've started looking at security jobs. Places with modern systems. No delays. Because I'm afraid of what happens when you stare at a man dying for 6 seconds and do nothing. I'm afraid of what you become. What I've become. And I'm terrified of what Martin meant when he said we find each other. If you work night shift at a convenience store, check your security system. How long is your delay? And whatever you do, if a balding man in a gray overcoat comes in at 3:14 a.m., don't serve him coffee. Don't count those seconds. Don't become like us. I used to pick up anyone who flagged me down. That's the job when you drive the night shift. 3 years behind the wheel taught me that desperation wears many faces after midnight. The businessman who missed the last train, the woman fleeing an argument, the hospital worker ending a 16-hour shift. I never discriminated. Money is money, and night fares tip better. That policy changed 8 weeks ago. It was a Tuesday in late October, that perfect autumn chill settling over the city. Rain transformed streetlights into hazy orbs and slicked the asphalt to a mirror finish. Bad weather is good business in my line of work. Nobody wants to wait for the bus when the sky is emptying itself. At 2:37 a.m., I was considering calling it a night when my dispatcher radioed a pickup at Westlake Apartments. This far into my shift, I almost declined. Westlake was a 30-minute drive in good weather, nearly an hour in this downpour. But something about the steady rhythm of rain against the roof of my Crown Victoria made me agree. Confirm pickup at Westlake, I responded. ETA 50 minutes. Passenger says they'll wait, the dispatcher replied. Name's Eleanor Campbell, apartment 718. Says to call when you arrive, doesn't want to wait in the lobby. Westlake appeared through the rain as a hulking shadow, a 16-story relic from the 1970s. I parked under the concrete overhang and called the number provided. The phone rang 7 times before she answered. This is your taxi. I'm outside Westlake. Thank you for coming all this way, she said. I'll be down in a moment. Blue raincoat, black umbrella. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. I was about to call again when a figure emerged from the building, slight frame in a blue raincoat, black umbrella obscuring their face. Ms. Campbell? She nodded, folding her umbrella and sliding into the back seat. Up close, she was older than I'd expected, mid-60s, with silver hair in a precise bob and eyes too large for her narrow face. Her hands were gloved in thin black leather. Where to? I asked, meeting her eyes in the rearview mirror. Harmon Cemetery, she replied without hesitation. Do you know it? I did. The oldest graveyard in the county, 20 miles in the opposite direction from the city. Odd destination at 3:30 a.m., but I'd taken people to stranger places. That's quite a trip in this weather, I said, pulling away. Special occasion? She smiled thinly. You could say that. It's an anniversary. We drove in silence for several miles, the rain intensifying. Through the mirror, I could see she sat perfectly still, hands folded in her lap. Mind if I ask who you're visiting? I finally said. At the cemetery, I mean. My husband. And our son. I'm sorry for your loss. Don't be. It was a long time ago. 25 years tonight, actually. We lapsed back into silence as I turned onto the rural highway. The rain had reduced visibility to just yards beyond my headlights. Have you ever been married? She asked suddenly. Divorced. 3 years now. Children? A daughter. She lives with her mother in Colorado. Do you see her often? Twice a year, if I'm lucky. Her mother remarried. They have a new baby now. So she has a replacement father, Eleanor observed. And a replacement sibling. Something in her tone made my skin prickle. I wouldn't put it that way. No, I suppose you wouldn't. She leaned forward. Tell me, do you ever feel expendable? I adjusted my grip on the steering wheel, suddenly aware of how isolated we were. Look, ma'am. When someone can replace you so easily, as a husband, as a father, don't you feel as though you never really mattered? The question hit deeper than I cared to admit. I changed the subject. We're about 10 minutes from Harmon. You sure you want to be out in a cemetery in this weather? I can wait and drive you back. That's kind, she said. But I may be some time. You can leave me there. There's no shelter. And no other taxis will come all the way out here. I'm well aware. This isn't my first visit. We turned onto the access road to Harmon's cemetery. The gates stood open, odd for the middle of the night. Just through the gates, she instructed. I pulled up and shifted into park. Eleanor withdrew a crisp stack of bills, far more than the meter showed. This should cover it, she said. As I took the cash, her fingers brushed mine. Even through the leather, her touch was ice cold. You're sure I can't wait? She smiled, the expression finally reaching her eyes. You're a kind man. But no, this is something I do alone. Before stepping out, she paused. What's your daughter's name? Lily. She's 7. Eleanor nodded as if confirming something. A beautiful name. You should call her more often. Children need their real fathers, no matter how far away they live. She walked through the cemetery gates, her figure quickly swallowed by darkness. Something felt wrong. I should leave, count my generous tip and head back. Instead, I found myself stepping out into the rain. Ms. Campbell? My voice was lost in the downpour. I left my headlights on for illumination and followed her path. Harmon Cemetery was old money, elaborate mausoleums and ornate headstones. Near the center stood a massive oak tree. As I approached, I spotted her umbrella propped against its trunk. Eleanor knelt before a modest headstone, seemingly oblivious to the mud soaking through her coat. Ms. Campbell? Are you all right? She didn't acknowledge me. I moved closer, close enough to read the headstone by my distant headlights. Robert Campbell, 1958 to 1999. Beloved husband and father. Beside it, a smaller stone. James Campbell, 1992 to 1999. Forever in our hearts. My throat tightened. The son would have been just 7. Lily's age. They died together, Eleanor said, still facing the graves. Car accident. Brake lines. That's what the official report said. I'm very sorry. Robert was having an affair. They were planning to leave. He'd filed for divorce. Full custody of James. She ran a gloved hand over the smaller headstone. He said I was unstable. Unfit. I discovered them on this road. She continued. Do you know what it's like to watch your husband's car go over a guardrail? To hear them screaming as it fell? It's a sound you never forget. I stepped back. Ms. Campbell, I think we should go. She rose to her feet. The police investigated. They found evidence the brake lines had been cut. They questioned me extensively. A small smile played at her lips. But they never found anything conclusive. No proof. I really think we should leave now. Do you know what it's like? She asked, stepping toward me. To get away with murder? Every instinct screamed to run, but my feet seemed rooted. This isn't funny. It's not meant to be. For 25 years I've come here on this night. Confessed to them. Explained why it had to happen. But confession without penance isn't enough anymore. I'm going to my car now. No, she said simply. You're not. Excuse me? You're a father who abandoned his child. Left her to be raised by another man. Replaced. Forgotten. I didn't abandon. Men like you. Men like Robert. You don't deserve your children. She held out a small photograph. This is James on his 7th birthday. 2 months before Robert decided we were expendable. I don't understand what you want from me. Penance. Not mine. Yours. She glanced at her watch. In approximately 12 minutes, the brake lines on your taxi will fail. Not here, that would be too obvious. On the curve just before the highway on-ramp. The same curve where Robert and James died. A chill spread through my body. You're insane. Perhaps. But I've had 25 years to perfect my methods. Your taxi has been parked outside my building many times these past weeks. You never check under your vehicle, did you notice that? Not once. 12 minutes, she said again. Unless you run very fast, and check your brake lines right now. But even then, in this rain, in this darkness, could you find the cut? Fix it in time? I turned and ran, feet slipping on the wet grass. I could see my taxi through the gates, headlights still blazing. Behind me, her voice carried on the wind. Call your daughter tomorrow. I dropped to my knees to peer underneath the vehicle. In the dim light, I couldn't see anything amiss. I slid beneath, rain soaking my clothes as I ran my hands along what I hoped were brake lines. Nothing. Nothing. Then, a small nick, a slight dampness that might be brake fluid or might just be rain. I crawled out, mind racing. I was miles from anywhere, with a potentially homicidal woman somewhere in the cemetery. The keys trembled in my hand. I made my decision and dialed 911. I need police at Harmon Cemetery. There's a woman here who's threatened me. She claims she tampered with my vehicle. Stay in your location, sir. Officers are being dispatched. I waited, scanning the darkness beyond my headlights. Minutes crawled by. Had she been bluffing? Or was I sitting in a death trap, saved only by my decision to follow her? Blue and red lights eventually appeared. 2 officers emerged from their patrol car. Sir? You reported a threat? I explained everything. They listened with professional skepticism. One headed toward the cemetery with a flashlight, while the other examined my taxi. There's no sign of tampering, he said. Brake lines look intact. Relief washed over me, followed by embarrassment. The first officer returned. No sign of anyone out there. Found these, though. He held up a folded blue raincoat and a closed black umbrella, both dried despite the downpour. That's impossible, I stammered. She was soaked. It's been pouring all night. The officers exchanged a look. Sir, it started raining less than 10 minutes ago. The storm just reached this area. I stared at them, confused. The rain had been constant since I'd picked her up. Hadn't it? Let's check the headstones. Robert and James Campbell. They died in 1999. We trudged into the cemetery. I led them to the oak tree. It was right here. 2 headstones side by side. The officer's flashlight illuminated a large family plot with the name, Harmon, engraved on each stone. No Campbells. Sir, have you been drinking tonight? No. I'm working. And you said this woman called your dispatcher? Yes. Check with them, Eleanor Campbell, apartment 718. The officer radioed the request. His radio crackled. Westlake Apartments doesn't have a 7th floor. Maximum of 6 floors in that building. No tenant named Campbell. Call my dispatcher. They gave me the fare. Another radio call. No pickup had been assigned to me at Westlake. My last logged fare had been an airport drop-off at 1:15 a.m. The world tilted beneath my feet. That's not possible. I picked her up. She paid me. I reached for my pocket where I'd stashed Eleanor's cash. Empty. The officers insisted on following me back to the city. For my own safety. I didn't argue. That was 8 weeks ago. I've stopped driving night shifts. Stopped driving altogether. The taxi company was understanding, but firm, medical evaluation required before returning. I've called Lily every day since then. I still don't know what happened that night. Maybe stress, exhaustion, some waking dream. That's what the doctors suggest. But I know what I saw, what I heard, what I felt. And I've started researching local accidents. 25 years ago, a man named Robert Campbell and his 7-year-old son died when their car went over a guardrail near Harmon Cemetery. Brake failure was suspected. The wife, Eleanor Campbell, was briefly investigated but never charged. 3 weeks after my night at the cemetery, She was found dead in her apartment. Natural causes. No surviving family. No visitors for years, according to neighbors. I don't pick up fares after midnight anymore. I don't drive in the rain. And every night I check under my car before I get in. Just in case. Because the most terrifying possibility isn't that I imagined Eleanor Campbell. It's that I didn't. I wasn't supposed to work that night. My manager called at 5:30 p.m. while I was halfway through microwaving leftover pasta. Carla was sick, he said. Could I cover her overnight shift at the Sunoco? Double pay, he promised, knowing I needed the money for next semester's textbooks. I agreed before my dinner even finished cooking. That decision has hollowed me out in ways I still can't fully explain. The Sunoco sits just off exit 16, the last gas station for 50 miles on a stretch of highway that cuts through nowhere. It's one of those places designed for transits, where people stop only long enough to refuel both vehicle and body before continuing to somewhere that matters. During the day, we get truckers, families on road trips, and the occasional local. At night, the clientele changes. Insomniacs. Drunks seeking coffee. People who prefer darkness for reasons of their own. I'd worked the night shift before, but never on a Wednesday. Carla always took Wednesdays. It's my lucky day, she'd say with that gap-toothed smile. Nothing bad ever happens to me on Wednesdays. The shift began normally enough. I arrived at 10:45 p.m., received the usual warnings from the evening guy about the broken security camera in the back corner, and the flickering light above pump 3. I counted the register, stocked the coffee station, and settled in behind the counter with my psychology textbook. The chapter on cognitive dissonance seemed appropriate for someone who claimed to be a serious student yet spent nights watching strangers buy energy drinks and rolling papers. Between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m., I served exactly 9 customers. A tired mother with a crying baby buying formula. 2 college-age guys purchasing beer with obviously fake IDs that I accepted anyway. A truck driver who spent 20 minutes in the bathroom before buying nothing but a pack of Tums. The usual parade of nocturnal humanity. At 1:17 a.m., he walked in. I wouldn't have remembered the exact time, except that I'd just checked my phone when the door chimed. He was unremarkable at first glance. Mid-30s, average height, brown hair cut short and neat. He wore khakis and a blue button-down shirt, like someone who'd just left an office job, except for the hour. His only distinguishing feature was a small scar that curved around his right eye like a pale crescent moon. "Good evening," he said, voice pleasant and modulated. "Quiet night?" I nodded, slipping my textbook beneath the counter. Something about his demeanor made me want to appear professional. "That's good," he said, smiling. "Quiet is good. Safe." He wandered the aisles methodically, examining products with unusual intensity, picking up items and putting them back with deliberate care. After nearly 10 minutes, he approached the counter with only a large black coffee and a local newspaper. $2.37, I said. He placed exact change on the counter. Not from a wallet, the coins and bills emerged from his pocket, pre-counted. His fingers were clean, nails perfectly trimmed. "You're not Carla," he observed as I bagged the newspaper. The hairs on my arms rose slightly. Regulars knew the staff, of course, but something in his tone suggested more than casual familiarity. "No, I'm covering for her. She's sick. Nothing serious, I hope." His expression remained pleasant, but his eyes never blinked. "Just a stomach bug, I think." "That's good to hear." He took his coffee but left the newspaper on the counter. "Could you hold that for me? I'll be back for it." Before I could answer, he was already walking toward the door. He paused with his hand on the push bar and turned back. "What's your name?" Company policy flashed through my mind. Don't share personal information with customers. But he seemed harmless enough, and I was wearing a name tag anyway. "Alex." "Nice to meet you, Alex." "I'm John." He smiled again. "I'll see you later." The door closed behind him, and I watched through the window as he walked, not to a car, but along the edge of the building, disappearing around the corner toward the air pump. I didn't think much of it. People sometimes parked on the side lot when the front spaces were taken, though tonight the lot was empty. I returned to my textbook, but the words seemed to blur together. The encounter had left me vaguely unsettled for reasons I couldn't articulate. After a few minutes, I gave up reading and decided to restock the cooler. As I was loading bottled water onto the bottom shelf, the door chimed again. I stood and saw John returning, still carrying his coffee cup, which appeared untouched. "Forgot something?" I asked. He tilted his head slightly. "No, just came back in to warm up. It's getting chilly out there." It was July in New Jersey. The night was humid and still hovered around 75 degrees. "Right," I said, moving back behind the counter. "Did you want your newspaper now?" "Not yet. I enjoy our conversations too much to leave so soon." Our conversations. Plural. As if we'd been talking for hours. I forced a customer service smile. "So, Alex," he continued, leaning against the counter, "how long have you worked here?" "About 8 months. And always the night shift?" "Mostly weekends. I'm in college. Psychology." He nodded toward my textbook, visible beneath the counter. "Fascinating subject. The human mind has so many spaces inside it. Rooms we don't know exist until someone shows us the door." I made a noncommittal sound, glancing at the clock. 1:43 a.m. Where were all the insomniacs and truckers when you needed them? "Have you worked Wednesday nights before?" he asked. "No, that's usually Carla's shift." "Yes, Carla." He sipped his coffee finally. "She's very consistent. Very punctual. I admire that in a person." Something cold slid down my spine. "Are you a regular customer?" "On Wednesdays, I mean." "Oh, yes. Carla and I have a standing appointment." His smile remained fixed. "Every Wednesday at 2:17 a.m. exactly. For the past 43 weeks. The precise number struck me as odd. "That's specific. I appreciate routine. And so does Carla." I glanced at the clock again. 1:47 a.m. Something about this man made minutes drag like hours. "Well," I said with forced brightness, "maybe you should come back at your usual time? If you want to keep your routine, I mean. That won't be necessary tonight." He straightened up. "I think our business can be concluded early just this once." "Business?" I echoed. "May I see your phone, Alex?" "Excuse me?" "Your cell phone." He gestured to my pocket where my phone was visible. "May I see it?" "I'm sorry, but no." His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes hardened. "I only want to show you something. A photo. It would be easier than explaining." "Company policy." I lied. "No personal phone use during shifts." He sighed, not in frustration but as if disappointed in a promising student. "Very well. Let me ask you something else. Has Carla ever mentioned me?" "I don't really talk with Carla much." "I find that surprising, given what she knows about you." My mouth went dry. "What do you mean?" He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small black notebook. The cover was worn, the edges of the pages uneven from frequent use. He opened it and began to read. "Alex Mercer, 21. Lives at 1421 Parkview Apartments, Unit 3C. Takes the bus to campus most days but walks home after evening classes. Keeps a spare key above the doorframe, very unsafe. Mother calls every Sunday at 7 p.m. Sleeps with the television on." I spread through my veins. "How do you know that?" "I know what Carla knows," he said simply, returning the notebook to his pocket. "She's been very helpful. Methodical in her observations." "Observations?" The word came out as barely a whisper. "Of you? And the others, of course. You're not special in that regard." He leaned forward conspiratorially. "Though she does think you have potential. That's high praise coming from Carla." I took a step back, bumping against the cigarette display. "I think you should leave. Do you know why Carla always works Wednesdays?" He continued as if I hadn't spoken. It's because that's when people are most vulnerable. Studies show that Wednesday is when our mental defenses are lowest. The energy of Monday has faded, and the promise of the weekend is still too distant to provide comfort. People on Wednesdays are permeable. I'm calling the police, I said, reaching for the store phone. With what evidence of wrongdoing? He smiled. I'm simply a customer having coffee and conversation. But go ahead if it makes you feel safer. My hand froze above the receiver. He was right. He hadn't actually done anything threatening. Just talked. Just been weird. The police would laugh it off. What do you want? I asked finally. To give you a choice. He placed his coffee cup on the counter. Carla isn't sick, Alex. She's gone. Last week she finally completed her observations and was graduated to the next phase. After 43 consecutive Wednesdays, she earned that right. What are you talking about? What next phase? The work, he said reverently. The real work. Beyond watching and recording. Beyond simply witnessing the patterns of human behavior. He slid the newspaper toward me. That's why I need you to look at this. Against my better judgment, I looked down. It was the local paper from 6 days ago. A small headline on the bottom of the front page. Local woman missing, police seek information. Above the headline was a grainy photo of Carla. No, I whispered. Yes, he answered. But not in the way you think. Carla wasn't taken. She evolved. She made her choice, just as you will. I should have run. Should have hit the silent alarm beneath the counter. Should have grabbed the bat we kept near the storeroom door. Instead, I stood frozen as he reached into his other pocket and withdrew a second notebook, this one new, the cover still stiff and shiny. This is yours, he said, placing it on the counter. Should you choose to accept it. Wednesday nights. Observations. Records. Patterns. For 43 weeks. And if I don't? His expression didn't change, but his eyes seemed to darken. Then you become an observation yourself. A subject rather than an observer. I don't recommend that option. The notebook sat between us, innocent and terrible. How many? My voice shook. How many others are there, watching? Enough, he said. We have eyes everywhere now. Shopping malls. Schools. Hospitals. Watching and recording the patterns. He tapped the notebook. The choice is yours, but I need your answer now. What happens after 43 weeks? His smile widened, revealing perfect white teeth. You get to meet the others. All of them. And learn why we've been watching. I stared at the notebook, mind racing through options. If I refused, would he hurt me? If I pretended to agree, could I report him later? Would anyone believe me? I'll give you 30 seconds, he said. Though I think we both know what you'll choose. Carla saw your potential. Your curiosity. The way you watch your customers already. How you create little stories about their lives. He glanced at his watch. 20 seconds. My hand moved toward the notebook, almost of its own accord. He was right. I did watch people. Did wonder about their secrets, their patterns. 10 seconds. I picked up the notebook. It felt heavier than it should have. His smile softened to something almost gentle. Good choice, Alex. You'll start next Wednesday. This address. He slid a business card next to the newspaper. 2:17 a.m. exactly. Don't be late. He turned and walked out, disappearing into the night as suddenly as he'd appeared. I stood clutching the notebook, heart pounding in my ears. After my shift ended, I drove directly to the police station and reported everything. They took my statement with professional concern, but I could see the skepticism in their eyes. They promised to look into Carla's disappearance, asked if I needed a ride home, suggested I get some rest. They found nothing, of course. John, if that was his real name, never returned to the Sunoco. Carla remained missing. The business card contained an address that didn't exist. When they finally located her apartment and searched it, They found 42 black notebooks filled with detailed observations of her customers. The final notebook was missing. I quit that day. Moved back home with my parents. Transferred to a different college. Changed my phone number. But I kept the notebook. Empty. Unopened. A reminder. Last Wednesday, at exactly 2:17 a.m., I woke from a dead sleep to find my bedroom window open, though I was certain I'd locked it. On my nightstand was a newspaper with a familiar headline, "Local Woman Missing, Police Seek Information." The photo was of my psychology professor. And beneath the newspaper was a business card with an address. I haven't decided yet if I'm going. But I find myself watching people more closely now. Noticing their patterns. Their vulnerabilities. Making mental notes about their habits. After all, Wednesday is coming again. And people on Wednesdays are permeable. Thanks so much for watching. I can't express enough how much your support means. The likes, the comments, it all really helps the channel grow. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. I always take the time to read them. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss out on any new videos. See you next time.